Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2015 thriller horror film Green Room. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Vontae for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would personally like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below. And I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Green Room is one of those films that has gotten a lot of acclaim over the years. It's definitely got the cult film label from a decent amount of critics and from its fans. And on one hand, I can kind of get it. But on the other hand, I think this just doesn't hit all the right notes to be a cult classic for me personally. Honestly, I just thought this was okay. I thought this was average, adequate, decent, middle of the road. I didn't really find this to be a instant classic or a film, honestly, I really have any desire to watch again. Um, And it's not because it's like a particularly badly made film or anything. It's just a movie that, for me personally, when it comes to the kind of stuff that I personally look for out of a movie like this, it didn't deliver. So it's directed by a man named Jeremy Saulnier. And prior to this, he did a film called Blue Ruin, which I've also heard a lot of good things about, but I haven't seen yet. And his direction is good, but it's very understated. It's very subtle. It's almost in some ways deliberately restrained because he's trying to take more of almost like a Christopher Nolan or some other filmmaker of that vein approach to the film visually. So it's a movie that, to me, visually isn't as eye-catching as it could have been. Considering the fact that it's called Green Room, I don't know. I was expecting maybe some more style, some more flair when it comes to the directing, maybe some usage of green lighting in a clever way, but it really doesn't do that, other than maybe like a couple scenes. Most of the time, it's shot in a way that's just very muted and held back. This is even the case when it comes to the few bits of action or the moments in the film that involve some sort of dog attack or a attempted attack by a human. It just it's one of those things where a little more style, a little more flair from the direction would make the sequence pop more and be even more intense and even more thrilling, but it just doesn't go that route. It's focusing on being more realistic and gritty, and I think for some people that's a plus. For me, I think that's one of the problems that I have with this film is that even from a visual standpoint, it just doesn't have fun with the concept as much as I feel that it could, especially for a movie that has this very punk influence. Like, it doesn't really have the same kind of energy that you would expect from a punk rock thriller. And all of that being said, the direction is still skilled when it comes to the more restrained approach. There definitely are some nice looking shots in this film, some good traveling shots, some sequences that showcase the empty venue in a pretty effective way. There are some sequences that are genuinely full of tension and are downright claustrophobic at times. So it's not that it's a badly directed movie. It's just I feel like this movie would have benefited a lot from having a little bit more style. And it's also written by Jeremy Saulnier, and this is honestly where I feel the film lacks the most. there's nothing wrong with having a very simple, straightforward plot that's just a tale of survival in a bad situation. And this is by no means a bad concept or a bad idea. In fact, I think the concept is great. I really like the idea of having a band uh, going to this venue in the middle of the woods somewhere in a sketchy part of the state, and then being involved in this life or death scenario where one of the band members sees a murder, and then they're trapped in the green room and they have to try to find a way to escape and to survive. I don't mind that idea at all. I think it's actually a pretty good concept. I just don't think it's that well executed when it comes to the screenplay, because just like the direction, it's so understated, it's so held back and restrained, and it's too focused on being realistic when honestly it just needs to have a little bit more fun with the concept. Instead, it's just being super real, super held back in that regard because of the fact that it's got to be realistic. So we can't have the violence or the action be too over the top. I mean, if you look at the poster, you see Anton Yelchin with the machete bracing for what looks like an insane sequence, and you never really get that when it comes to his character with the machete. There's not like a sequence where he goes absolutely wild with the machete and takes out a bunch of people and hacks off limbs and cuts throats and is a total badass. You don't get any of that. You don't really get any moments like that whatsoever in the movie that like are crowd pleaser moments. Everything's just so understated and restrained. And it's also not as consistently effective when it comes to its visceralness. So there's some moments of visceral violence that really do leave an impact, like when it comes to the moment where Pat winds up getting his arm all messed up to the point where his hand is falling off his arm, and they have to duct tape it up later. Like that whole sequence when the neo Nazis are trying to get in through the door and his arm gets fucked up, like that's actually legitimately a pretty intense sequence. And there's a few other moments like that where you get like a sharp burst of violence that really makes you wince. But for the most part, there's a lot of stuff that's happening off screen, or there's just not really that much of a variety when it comes to the kills. So, for instance, when it comes to the other band members who get taken out by this neo Nazi group who are running this venue, there's like a dog that kills like two of them. One of them gets killed off screen, basically. Another guy gets stabbed, but a lot of it's just boring. It's dull. It's not very inventive because it's so focused on being realistic. And I think for some people that really works. That's one of the big reasons why the film is something that they really like and they really enjoy, and to each their own. I just prefer a thriller in this vein doing something that's a little bit more out of the ordinary. And I didn't really get that. And I think the script did a pretty decent job establishing the setting. It did a good job establishing the threat, the neo Nazi group, and making them somewhat formidable, and definitely making them into characters that you definitely didn't like. But it didn't really have fun with them either, to the point where there was like a single member of the group that was like Clarence Boddicker or someone that you loved to hate. You were just indifferent on these characters. And so that didn't really help the film, in my opinion, either. And then when you get to the climax, which is the build up after all of this slow burn, which I don't mind slow burn thrillers, but the payoff has to be incredible in order to make up for that. And I didn't really feel it was. It was just a very small, just forgettable showdown in the woods where the two remaining survivors of uh, of of the film, Amber and Pat, corner the last remaining members of the neo-Nazi group and shoot them rather easily. There really wasn't much of a struggle. It wasn't really much of a fight, and I appreciate the fact that it didn't have some kind of bullshit ending where they don't make it out or they actually do get framed by these neo-Nazis and they get away with it, but it just really wasn't that satisfying to me. It was just boom, you're dead, boom, you're dead. Oh, we're to shoot Patrick Stewart a few times, and that's really about it. And you're like, okay, like, all right. And when it comes to the character of Pat, like it seems like his character is going to be set up to have like this moment of triumph. And that doesn't really happen. At least it doesn't register that strongly because what he's given to do isn't really a ton. He has that whole speech about the paintball game, which I actually really liked, and I felt that it was going to set up for something where he just goes absolutely apeshit insane and takes out like half the guys, just like the paintball story when it comes to his friend in that instance. But that doesn't happen here. He just, for the most part, doesn't really do that much, and the girl Amber does most of the damage. He shoots Patrick Stewart like once or twice maybe, but he doesn't do anything with that machete that he's shown with on the poster. And yeah, that was a letdown. And speaking of the band, like the other band members are fine in terms of the way that they're written. They're not, particularly unlikable or anything. Like I didn't have a problem with Sam or Reese or Tiger. But they're not really given a lot of depth either. And also their personality and their charisma isn't really that prevalent. So, well, I didn't mind them. It was just another one of those things where I was just kind of indifferent on it because I'm sorry, like a scene where one of the guys farts in the van, it's not that endearing to me. I know it is for maybe some other people, but for me, it wasn't like that endearing. So it's one of those things where the characters, other than Pat and Emily's friend Amber, really weren't that strong either. Also, the whole reason why they get stuck in the situation is kind of lame. Oh, he just decides to go into the green room and get the phone and then sees a dead body and then now they're in the shit. Now they're in trouble. It's like he could have asked somebody to go in the green room and get the phone. He could have done something like that instead of just running in there. But then again, if that happened, we wouldn't have a movie. And I wouldn't really point that out if I found the rest of the film more satisfying, the rest of the story more satisfying as a whole, and I just didn't. And there's also a large chunk of the story where not a lot is happening. These characters are just trapped in the room, in the green room, and you have the owner coming by and talking to them, trying to set up a plan or trying to set them up, Darcy, and you have some other stuff involving some other sort of things that are happening outside of the green room, and it takes a while for anything to really happen. And when it does happen, like it's not really that memorable or that thrilling. It's very held back, like I said, like a good chunk of the movie. It's almost like they never didn't have a green light to just go crazy with it. And I'm like, this is something that they should have gone crazier with instead of just being realistic and then also trying to be a serious drama. And I'm like, this didn't really need that approach, at least not to me personally. It just makes it very just meh at the end of the day. So yeah, the script, I don't think it was that great. There are some lines of dialogue that I didn't mind. The paintball monologue. There were some moments where uh, it had a little bit of dark humor that kind of got me. But there's a bunch of other stuff that just was kind of in one ear and out the other when it comes to the dialogue. In fact, most of the time, that's what the dialogue was like. Um, and the cast is fine. I mean, Anton Yelchin in one of his last film roles before he tragically passed away, uh, he's doing the best he can with this character and trying to make it work. Um, it's not really his fault that his character is kind of a wimp. That's really what he was given when it comes to the script. I would have liked to have seen him take charge more and actually, you know, be somewhat of a badass, but he wasn't given that opportunity. And I think if he was, he probably would have done a great job with that because he was a really good and genuinely talented actor. He definitely had the most charisma and charm out of everyone in the cast. And I do feel it was a pretty good performance. Imogen Poots, I also didn't mind. In fact, I liked her quite a bit. I liked her a lot more in this than I did in the Fright Night remake. I thought she did a good job. She had some charm too, and some personality that I definitely did notice. And I felt that she and Anton were a good pair. Alia Shawkat was just average, just adequate as Sam. Felt the same way about Joe and Callum. To be honest, Joe Cole and Callum Turner, like the two performances, just were so similar that I honestly could barely even tell the difference between the two, except that one of them had green hair. Patrick Stewart, it was nice to see him play a villain again, but unlike in something like Masterminds, he's not really having fun with it. So it just leads to something that's just kind of boring. He's definitely got a presence. He definitely comes across as if he's playing a role of a character that you definitely don't want to be on the bad side of, but he doesn't really do much. So you don't really get to see him like sink his teeth into the role or really do anything that really makes him particularly menacing or memorable. He's just there. It's Patrick Stewart, and he's a racist skinhead, and that's really all that you get. Like, it's okay, it's nice to see him play someone against type, but it's not like it's the only time he's ever played a bad guy. He's played bad guys in other movies, like I said, the film Masterminds, which I honestly liked his performance in that a lot more. uh Mark Webber as Daniel, Eric Edelstein as Big Justin, Macon Blair as Gabe, Kai Lennox as Clark, the dog fight breeder, Brent Worsner as Worm, Taylor Toons as Emily. Like, they were just serviceable. Like, no one was doing a bad job acting wise, but their characters for the most part didn't really have a lot when it comes to their, for the script. Forgive me, there's like a gnat in here. I don't know how the fuck that thing got in here. But this gnat must be a really big fan of Green Room because it's giving me all kinds of shit in this video. It's like, how dare you talk bad about Green Room? How dare you not say that this movie is a masterpiece and say that it's just mediocre? I'll show you. But honestly, the performances across the board, they're fine. I think the other aspects of the film, technique wise, are also fine. The cinematography, the editing, the music by Brooke Blair and Will Blair, not that great to me. Very just focused purely on atmosphere and really nothing that memorable about the score. I think the punk rock songs that they chose were fitting and they worked for the movie. And I also definitely did appreciate the location, the setting of everything, the production design, the art direction. They did a really good job making this venue look real and look like the real thing. So I will give the film a lot of credit for that. Also, it's pretty cool that it was shot over in the Pacific Northwest. It was shot over in Oregon, so I think somewhere in Portland actually, for some shots, and that's pretty much around where I grew up. So, I grew up in the Tiger Portland area in Oregon. So that was pretty cool. I'll give the film some kudos for that as well. But yeah, I know like this isn't that long of a video, but there really isn't like a whole lot to say about the movie. Like it's got a very simple plot, and that's not necessarily something that's a knock on the movie. There's been a lot of movies that have done that. For instance, Judgment Night, a film that I really enjoy, directed by Stephen Hopkins and starring Emilio Estevez and Cuba Gooding Jr. and what's his name? God, he was in PCU, and his name will come to me later, probably after I'm done recording. But yeah, Jeremy Piven, that's who it is. That's who it is. That had a great cast, and I thought it was genuinely thrilling and exciting and fun throughout. Like that's a good example of a movie that has a concept, honestly, exactly like this, about a group of people that are in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they have to try to survive, being hunted down by these punks. But instead of it just being stuck with this one room and maybe the room beneath it, it's the whole city at night. And so that just leads to a lot more variety in terms of the different sort of things that are happening throughout the plot, and also the different sort of settings that you can put these characters in. Plus, I think they did a way better job when it comes to all of the characters in terms of giving them some kind of distinct personality and to make them stand out. And the villains were significantly better because they were a hell of a lot more memorable. And especially when it comes to Dennis Leary, like his character was menacing, but he was also a lot of fun to watch. You don't really get that with Patrick Stewart's character or anyone in Green Room. And that film had a lot of style and flair. Like it was like, you know what? We're gonna have some fun with this. We're not gonna try to be serious and gritty all the time. We'll have moments of grit, but we're not gonna do that for every single scene. So in a lot of ways, this is like a less entertaining, less effective version of Judgment Night to me personally. And it's also very much like a dull machete. Like it can cut things, but it's not going to cut them very well, and it's not going to be that effective when it comes to cutting things that consistently. So it can be effective as just a blunt tool or a blunt instrument. So in that regard, it can hit its target and it can get the job done, but it doesn't cut through things as well. And yeah, it's just a film that at the end of the day, I just felt like it was okay. There it had all these elements and everything that I think it could possibly need concept wise to be something unique and something cool and something that is genuinely worthy of being called a cult classic. But for me personally, it just didn't pull it off. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on Green Room. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.